Chapter 21. When you think you're the cock of the walk, you're probably about to find out you're just a fried chicken. Nice rules for changelings. Fleet had a total hissy, all the way back to Maiden Lane. I got to hear about how everything was a disaster, how her life was ruined, and how it was all my fault. If it, if you hadn't persuaded me into taking you to the dragon, she said, with three of us got out of the elevator at her apartment, everything would have been fine. Right, like you were having such a nice life before. Fleet unlocked the door, kicked her high heels across the room, ripped the tie from her braids, took off the jacket, collapsed onto the sofa. Do you have any idea how gross coffee maker gets? She wailed. I don't know why I listened to you. Because I promised we'd rescue you, I said, settling into the easy chair. Don't be such a stick in the mud. I've got a shot at winning this bet. I'm on a quest, remember? When's the last time you heard a fairy tale where the hero messed up a quest? I don't know, she said. The only fairy tales my godmother told me were the ones that lots of gold in them. Like Rumpelstiltskin. Trust me. I know this stuff, I said. I'm the only child and foundling that's at least as good as being poor widow's son. Anyway, I'll do my best. Now quit moaning and tell me all about the bull and the bear. Fleet groaned. You don't know? What kind of fairy godmother did you have anyway? A giant white rat, I said. Well, that explains a lot. Astrus is the best folklorist in the New York between, I said hotly. I'm sure you know every traditional fairy tale in the book, but the bull and the bear are modern urban folklore, which is different. The bull is all the optimists in the universe rolled into one. He thinks everything is wonderful and can only get better. He plunges into things without thinking about the consequences or who might get hurt. Kind of like you, Neef. I decided to ignore her dig. What does he do when something really bad happens? He morphs into the bear. He what? You deaf or something? When things get tough, the bull turns into the bear. The bear... Let me guess, I interrupted. The bear believes everything is terrible and can only get worse. He thinks too much and never takes risks. Like you? I couldn't help adding. Jerk, Fleet said, covered her face with her hands. The tiny braids fell forward with like a black curtain. We're doomed. Changling, who had gone back to her self-imposed task of organizing Fleet's books, stopped and looked at her. What's wrong with Fleet? She's a bear, I said. I thought she was a mortal changeling like you. Well, she's like a bear then. I turned to Fleet. Cheer up. Don't you know the things that always look worse right before the happy ending? Don't you know there's such thing as a total impossible task? Fleet lifted her head and glared at me. Don't you know that real life isn't like a fairy tale? Hello, I said. Dragons, giants, maidens in doorless towers. In New York between, fairy tales are real life. Not on Wall Street, they're not, Fleet said stubbornly. Wall Street is all about deals and markets and gold. Wall Street is about power. So is Jack and the extension ladder. Yeah. Changling said, sometimes Mom says Strumble is laughing, but Dad says she is an Arthur Permorizian. Fleet looked at me. What did she say? I shrugged. Strumble is Changeling's dog. That's all I know. Anthropomorphize, Changeling explained patiently, is the Greek. Anthropos means man, human being. Morphize means giving shape to. Anthropomorphize is when you treat something that is not human as if it were. I think she's telling us that outside animals don't laugh, I told Fleet, which is totally beside the point, because we're not outside. I've seen Ash just laugh. The puka too, even when he's being a dog or a horse. Fleet shook her braids gloomily. So they laugh. Big deal. Have you ever seen a supernatural cry? Banshees, I said triumphantly. Listen to me, Fleet. I may not know anything about brokers and investors, but I know this is going to work. Making things cry is easy. All we need is an onion and a handkerchief. Just shut up for a minute and let me think. Fleet started to worry about her thumbnail with her teeth. Changeling put the last book in place and got up, took the mirror out of the satchel, and carried it back to her corner. Okay, said Fleet. If this works, I'll be out of here. If it doesn't, I'm already cleaning the coffee maker for life. I suppose he could eat me, but at this point, I don't care. We can buy an onion on the canal, and handkerchief too. I'm not letting you stink up one of mine. I grinned at her. You're a princess, Fleet, I said. I'm sorry I called you a bear. Come on, Changeling. We're going back to Chinatown. Changeling, absorbed in the mirror, said, I need more data. It is possible that the bull lacks tear ducts. Fleet and I left her to it and went to the canal alone. Now that we had a plan, Fleet was totally bullish. It was the end of the morning rush hour, and the streets were clogged with gold-blind brokers and investors. Fleet taught me this game the younger Wall Street changelings liked, where you had to zigzag through a crowd of brokers as fast as you could. Of course, I kept bumping into folk, which made them roar and take blind swipes at the ground. Mostly they hit another broker. Sometimes they came pretty close to taking my head off, but they didn't catch me, and by the time Fleet and I got to Chinatown, all sweaty and laughing, we were friends. Our first order of business, as Fleet said, was to find the largest and stinkiest onion in the Chinatown. At the first at the third floor stand we found out that made my eyes water from about 3 feet away. The Shinsi shopkeeper wrapped it in some newspaper, gave it to me, smiled, and held out his hand. I held back and shook the hand and thanked him for the generosity in the best Mandarin. This was not the right thing to do. The Shinsin jerked his hand away and launched into a long and violent speech about round-eyed tricksters and onion thieves, while Fleet laughed helplessly. How do you pay for things in the park? Fleet asked when she paid him for the onion. Enchanted leaves and dog poop? Pay for things? You mean with money? We don't. We trade. Fleet shook her head. Are you telling me that you've never been shopping? What's that? For some reason, this made her give me a hug. Neef, girl, shopping is the most fun you can do without magic. Come on, I'll show you. Shopping turned out to be little like questing, only safer. Instead of trading for things with fresh meat or favors or songs or magic talesmen, Fleet gave the shopkeeper silver coins out of the magic purse. It seemed to work kind of like Satchel, only Fleet said that it would give her only so many coins a day. She called it budget and grumbled a lot how small it was. Budget seemed pretty generous to me. Besides, the onion, it brought us a red silk handkerchief with mystery looking signs on it, some poison green mesh slippers decorated with sparkly flowers, some buns with red bean paste in the middle, and most wonderful of all, the jade frog with ruby eyes had winked at me. The shopkeeper knocked down the price when I told him I'd seen it the day before, and threatened it on the back silk cord so I could hang it around my neck. We also brought 4 silver hair clips, 2 for Changling and 2 for me. While we shopped, Fleet talked. She told me about the mortal changelings she knew and how they all hung at the cafe called Wannabe in Midtown when they were off duty and traded gossip about the folk. I know mortal changelings from Midtown and the Village and the Upper West Side and even the Park Avenue, she said. But none of the Central Park. None of my friends has ever met a park changeling. I don't know there were any. There's only one at a time, I said. Usually they get eaten by Wild Hunt. I managed to escape them, but the lady got mad and threw me out. I can't go back until I get all this stuff for her. It doesn't sound like a lot of fun, Fleet said. Why do you want to go back? It's home. So's my apartment in Maiden Lane, Fleet said. But I know if I get out of Wall Street, I mean really out, not just a field trip, I'm not ever coming back. It's not the same. You hate Wall Street. I love Central Park. It's all bright lights and bus bustle like Broadway or Chinatown. But there's plenty going on. The folk are fun to be around, mostly, and I've got some good friends. Friends? Fleet rolled her eyes. I don't believe you, part girl. Changelings don't make friends with folk. They love them. They hate them. They go on dates and their hearts broken, but they don't hang out. This sounds very weird to me, but I didn't feel like arguing. If you say so. I took another bite of the red bean bun we had been sharing. Speaking of places to live, where are you going to do when I rescued you from the dragon? Fleet snatched the last bit of bun out of my hand. Some place where nobody expects me to keep track of appointments and make coffee, that's where. Somewhere I can learn to be an artist. I was thinking the Village. There were lots of artists there, but it's awfully close to the maze. She sighed and popped the soft dough into her mouth. What about the Metropolitan Museum? I asked. I'd do anything to live there, she said passionately. But they don't take changelings either, or at least that's what I heard. I didn't know what the curator's policy on changelings was. As far as I knew, I was the only mortal regular at the museum, but that didn't mean anything. Maybe he just forgot to ask for one. The old market woman told me he's horrible absent-minded. Absent-minded. Fleet turned to me, her deep brown eyes aglow. You know the old market woman? Personally? Sure, she teaches me classical languages. Wow. She was the godsend I got for my field trip for a museum. I thought she was awesome. Scary, but cool, you know what I mean? I didn't. The old market lady was my teacher and my friend, and I never thought of her as either scary or particularly cool. But I nodded anyway. Do you know Rembrandt's self portrait? She asked shyly. I did, and she asked me excited questions about all the way through the financial maze. It felt good to be talking to the about the museum. The fact that Fleet was jealous of the time I spent there didn't hurt either. I was kidding. I wasn't kidding, she said as we approached the tower's invisible door. I'd do anything to be able to live there. Help me get you through this thing with the bear, and I'll see what I can do. Up in the apartment, Changeling was still where we left her, muttering over the mirror. Fleet put her green, sparkly slippers and got a cup of tea from the microwave. I'm poop, she said. Wake me if she turns up something useful. She disappeared into the inner room and closed the door. I sat down, I got up, I unpacked satchel. I found a knife and chopped the onion and wrapped it in my handkerchief. I scrubbed my stinky hands with the soap. I paced around Flea's piles of papers. I stroked my jade frog. I thought about how I could make a bear laugh. The fact that it was his nature to be gloomy wasn't such a big deal. Kelpies are gloomy and they laugh, mostly when they're trying to drown someone. Almost any supernatural will laugh when a mortal falls down, and if a mortal rips their pants or breaks an arm, that's even funnier. I considered tripping Changeling or Fleet, but not for long. I was the hero of this quest. Making a fool of myself was not my job. I was wondering if Satchel would give me a banana with a peel on was still on it, when Changeling snapped out of the mirror trance. I have data, she announced. Great, hang on a minute so I can call Fleet. She needs to hear this too. Walking Fleet almost counted as extra impossible task. When she finally awake, she wasn't exactly happy about it. She was even happier when Changeling made her report. According to the Wall Street NYB, the bull and the bear are mutually exclusive. Changeling told us from her near nest by the bookcase. They cannot exist in the same reality. The bull's reality is all hope, and the bear's reality is all despair. The bull cannot cry without becoming the bear. The bear cannot laugh without becoming the bull. Impossible, Fleet said bearishly. I knew it. I can go back to bed now. I knew it. Can I go back to bed now? Changeling and I glared at her. Do not interrupt me, Changeling said. On medicinals.nyb, I need that the Ryman Bowls of East 6th Street are known to weep whenever cockroaches exterminated, indicating that some mystical bulls do indeed have terror ducks. If the Wall Street bull is similarity equid, and if trigger for its transformation into a bear is genuine grief rather than the simple archery mation. Your onion may be very well make the bull weep without calling up the bear. See, I asked Fleet. I told you, Changeling, you rock. Now, what's up with the bear? I thought you might apply notress action on the same principle. Fleet clutched at her braids. What is she talking about? Changeling scowled at her. It is very rude of you to speak about me as if I were not here. Nitrous oxide is a gas used for aesthetic purposes, most commonly by dentists. It causes euphoria and disinhibition. In other words, laughter, or at least the appearance of laughter. Perfect, I said. Where can we get some? I have failed to find the reference to it anywhere online, Changling said. I have therefore concluded that nitrous oxide is known in New York between. I was disappointed, but Fleet pinched something very close to a fairy fit. We had a we had to listen to a lot of raining before she calmed down enough to listen to my idea about taking a fall and maybe splitting my jeans. That's not funny, she said. Now Doe Jones falling off her heels and splitting her skirt, that would be funny. Changling agreed, or at least she laughed for the first time since I've ever met her. Fleet and I agreed that Changeling laughing was a good sign and settled down with the rest of the buns to plan. The best idea, it was Fleet's, was to push Dow Jones over backyard into Dragon's coffee bowl, but we couldn't figure out we could get her to take one of us up on the tower with her. For maximum effect, we should time it for when Down Jones was carrying the coffee pot. Just about it made Fleet and Changeling laugh so hard they cried. I hoped the bears shared their sense of humor. Still clucking, Fleet went back to bed. Changeling curled up to her beloved bookcase with some cushions. I lay on the sofa and tried not to think of all the things that could go wrong. Eventually I fell asleep and dreamed of giants and the wild hunt and the dragon pulling gold over Central Park. I was almost glad that Fleet woke me and said I just had time for a shower and breakfast before our appointment with the dragon. I never had a shower before. It was like out in a heavy rain, only hot. I liked Honey's bath better. For breakfast, Satchel produced some eggs and microwave gave us a warm, sweet, gooey thing called cheese Danish. Changeling liked it. I was too nervous to eat it, or eggs either. After breakfast, Fleet fussed over our clothes. We needed to look professional. Changeling absolutely refused to give up her embroidered jacket and her shabby sandals. She did let Fleet smear her hair with some sticky stuff and pin it back to with the silver clips we'd bought in Chinatown, but only after Fleet had done mine first. When we were ready, we stood side by side in front of the bedroom mirror. I thought the black jacket Fleet had made me look taller than Changeling, more Down Jones like. I tried anything, my eyebrows and looking down my nose. Don't do that, Fleet. Don't do that, Neef, Fleet said. And the Changeling carries satchel. People think you're important if someone else is carrying your stuff. I can't believe I forgot to buy you shoes yesterday, but I guess it's too late. Okay, let's go. We don't have time to keep the dragon waiting. Park folk aren't exactly in time. There's daytime and nighttime, solstice and equinox, summer and winter, while spring folk, on the other hand, and all about clocks and appointments, and they expected everyone to pay strict attention to them. Everyone except the dragon. After we killed ourselves getting into treasury in time for our appointment, the dragon made us stand around waiting for just about forever. We weren't the only ones either. A bunch of security giants and worried-looking dwarfs and kind of nobles gathered at the base of the coffee tower, along with a handful of mortal changeling in the dragon's gray suits, who were probably the other exclusive assistant. They were all beautiful and grim and icy, their mouths twisted into little sneers they saw us. Changeling passed the time by watching the dragon's eyes. Fleet bit her nails. I thought about how it was going to be on the trip anyway. Anyone as on the ball, Dow Jones. Maybe I should just go back to plan A and do falling apart myself. Taking a dive into the coffee bowl should be enough for a laugh. If I could get up to it. The dwarfs went into the dome of the dragon's claws and came out again looking more worried than before. The Conabs went next and didn't return. I was ready to jump out of my skin. Finally, Dow Jones clicked over to us, looking even snootier than she had the day before. The dragons will speak to you now. She escorted us to the other side of the coffee tower, near the dragon's claws, but not in them, which was just fine with me. Glad you didn't make it. Glad you could make it, the dragon boomed, sounding horribly cheerful. I hope you don't mind if we skip the chit-chat. I want to put this matter to rest so everybody can go back to work. This was it, I swallowed. That's cool with me, I said. When do we start? Suddenly, as lightning struck, a huge white bull metamized on the surface on the ground. The bull of Wall Street was medium huge, say about the size of Central Park Diary. The blinding bright, its hooves and horns were paved with diamonds, and his eyes were twin diamonds as big as dinner plates. As the bull isn't really made to smile, but he was doing his level best. The result of both goofy and terrifying. So that's the bull, I said cheerfully. Isn't he? I suppose I have no usual 3 chances. The numbers of chances was not addressed in our notifications, the dragon said smoothly. This is gold. I've already wasted enough of this nonsense. You get 1 chance. Take it or leave it. I wanted to argue with him, but I didn't dare. Their moxie and their suicide. I turned to Changeling. The talisman of perfect sorrow, please, I said grandly. Changeling pulled a red silk package from satchel and gave it to me. The stink of chopped onion attacked my eyes and nose, blinking and sniffling. I stepped out onto the hoard. Coins and jewels slid under my bare feet, and I walked into the bowl in the talisman of perfect sorrow, balanced on the flat of my hands. When I was close enough, I lifted it towards the bull's huge glittering nostrils. But the onion's effect was immediate and dramatic. First, the bull snorted so hard that I flew backwards and landed sprawling at Fleet's feet. The security giants laughed and pointed. I levered myself up and watched the bull, stamping and tossing his head and bellowing. His horns and eyes flashed. Coins and cast-off scales fountained from his hue. No tears, though, not even scratching of a tear like diamonds. Well, the dragon said, it's been nice doing business with you, Dow Jones. Will you draw up the papers for Central Park air rights? You can take them to the lady when you go. On second thought, perhaps Down Jones should accompany you and supervise in a transaction herself, in case the lady has any questions. My heart settled. My heart settled somewhere around the bottom of my stomach. My throat closed up. My chin trembled. My eyes got hot and prickly, and something started jumping up and down in my middle. I hadn't cried full out, open mouth, nose running, sobbing, and so long it took me a while to realize what was going on. I tried to stop, but I couldn't. I couldn't even stay on my feet. The thing about a total meltdown is that you don't think about much while you're having it. The world could be coming for an end around you, and you wouldn't even notice. Eventually, however, you stop crying. But I calmed myself. I realized that Treasury had gotten very noisy, the loudest noises I have heard before, except for the dragon's voice, were the click of gold and the tap of the high heels against the scaly walkway. Now my ears rang with howls and screams and deep breathing hoots. Plus, the air stank, even to my tear clogged nose, of rotten eggs. I lifted my head and opened my swallow eyes straight into the depths of a huge scarlet cavern. Ringed with long, wicked teeth, a hot wind fanned my hair and caught surfacely in the back of my throat. The dragon was laughing. I sat up and looked around. Down at the foot of the coffee tower, all street folk were holding their sides and leaning against one another or rolling on the ground, helpless with laughter. The exclusive assistants were nowhere in sight. Out of the horde where the bull had been standing, I saw a complicated blur of dark and bright that made my head spin. I I got to my feet and stumbled over to Fleet, who was kneeling with both hands over her face, trembling like a fairy's wing. Fleet, it's me, Fleet. Are you okay? Fleet lifted her face ashy with fear. She stared at me widely, then over my shoulder in complicated blur. Will you look at that? She exclaimed. You did it, Neef. The bull and the bear are laughing and crying at the same time. I nearly collapsed again, and the time was relief. Are you sure? Pretty sure, she said. They're turning into each other so fast I can't actually tell who's doing what. I stared hard at the blur that was them both. What do you mean is? They're both laughing so hard they're crying. Does that count? She looked thoughtful. Maybe so, but the bear is laughing and the water is coming out of the bull's eye. It's a technically, but I still think of you win. Great, I said. Let's just let's just get scales and get out of here. Fleet shook her head until the ponytail flew. Bad idea. What if we can't carry them? What if himself sends giants after us to get them back? Can't we just make a run for it and hope he decides it would be a waste of resources to have us followed? With victory in sight, I felt like Super Changeling again. Part of me knew I should reassure Fleet, find Changeling, and plan how we're going to get Scales home. The rest of me didn't care. No way, I won those scales fair and square, and I'm taking them. Are you going to help me or not? She shot a terrified look at the growling dragon. I'll help, I guess, but we have to hurry. I ran toward the scales just as I thought I was going to snatch them up easily as Carlyle had snatched me, and carried them triumphantly out of the treasury. Douse Jones emerged from behind the scales, brandishing the heavy silver coffee pot in both hands. I skidded to a halt. "Get out of my way, Down Jones," I panted. I did what the dragon asked. I made the bear laugh and the bull cry. "The scales are mine, fair and square." "No, they aren't," Down Jones said grimly. "The dragon would say you rendered the deal null and void the exceeding the terms of your bargain. In other words, it took you 2 tries to succeed, and he only gave you one. If I were you, I'd cut my looses and run." "What about me?" Fleet wailed stumblingly up behind me. "After this stunt, he's going to have me for breakfast." "You'd better go with her then, haven't you?" Down Joan lowered the coffee pot. "You're not going to believe this, Fleet, but I'm not your enemy. I feel sorry for you. All the exclusive assistants do. You completely unsuited to this job. It's not entirely your fault, but BEAWARE of Changling Affairs made a bad call. It happens." She sighed. "I'll tell the dragon that the bull trampled the 3 of you to a bloody pulp. He won't care as long as the scales are still here." "What about the Central Park air rights?" I cried. "I don't know. Nobody signed anything. The contract's not even drawn up. I may not be able to convince him the deal's a no-go." Fleet and I looked at each other. The storm of supernatural laughter was behind to subside. We didn't have much time. I knew we didn't really have a choice, but I didn't want to leave with my quest unfinished. I started to say something. I don't know exactly what, but Fleet interrupted me. "Is nobody going to stop us?" "Not if you get out of here before himself sobers up," Down Jones said. "We have to get Changling," I cried. Luckily she hadn't gone far. Fleet found her by the coffee tower, doing her flowered turtle impregnation, with satchel clutched tight in her arms. She poked and produced her and prodded her to her feet. Prodded to her feet, and the 3 of us ran through a narrow gate in the treasury wall, and down a tiled corridor towards the familiar rumble of the betweens.